You know, when we say don't tread on Florida or let us alone, we mean that, including on your gas stoves. You're not taking our gas stoves away from us. That is your choice.
Hey there, welcome back to About That. I'm Kieran Oudshoorn. So today we want to get into a contentious issue that's been making headlines in the United States recently. And yes, you heard Florida Governor Ron DeSantis right. It's all about gas stoves. But the question is, how did gas stoves become such a heavily politicized symbol of freedom? Well, we're going to do a little bit of a rewind. We're going to break down exactly where all this began and try to figure out what the point of all of it is. Over the last couple of weeks, Republican politicians have been tweeting memes and slogans like this, saying, God, guns, gas stoves, and come and take it. And saying, well, you can take our gas stoves when you pry it from our cold, dead hands. Of course, referencing the famous speech by actor Charlton Heston to the NRA on gun rights.
So, as we set out this year to defeat the divisive forces that would take freedom away, I want to say those fighting words for everyone within the sound of my voice to hear and to heed, and especially for you, Mr. Gore. From my cold, dead hands.
So there's also this clip from Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, originally posted to her Instagram story that has now been reposted to Twitter and TikTok.
I do think it's funny, the absolute utter Republican meltdown where they're like, you can take my gas stove or my cold, dead hands. These are the same people who would have said we should have never gotten rid of leaded gasoline. Okay, so here's how it all started. At the end of December, a new study came out linking gas stoves to an increased case of asthma in kids in the U.S. Now, Bloomberg picked up that story. They spoke to an official from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission who said, quote, this is a hidden hazard and any option is on the table. Products that can't be made safe can be banned. Now, reaction to that comment came in immediately and sparked a pretty divided conversation right across the U.S. People saying no elected bureaucrats should be able to be given this kind of power. Of course, the power they're talking about is to ban gas stoves, I suppose. As for the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission official, who was quoted in that Bloomberg article, well, he immediately walked back his statement, saying that regulations only apply to new products. But the firestorm had already been ignited. And just 2 days later, the White House press secretary was forced to respond to the issue in a briefing.
The president does not support banning gas stoves, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission, which is independent, is not banning gas stoves. So I just want to be very clear on that.
Okay, now here's the thing. It's not new that gas stoves may be problematic for your health. For example, in 2013, scientists looked at 41 studies about gas cooking in homes, and they found a similar link, an increased rate of asthma in kids. And that study was published 10 years ago in the International Journal of Epidemiology, and it found results similar to the ones in the December study. Also, this isn't a new issue. There's another point that we haven't touched on here about gas stoves that is a concern. Health isn't the only problem that's being raised.
Then there are the climate impacts. Natural gas is made of methane, a powerful greenhouse gas. A recent U.S. study found that gas stoves leak methane even when they're off, and also when you light them.
So just by turning your burner on, you emit about the same amount of gas as if you just left it on for 10 minutes in terms of methane emissions.
So researchers in California found that gas stoves in the U.S. put out 2.4 million tons of carbon dioxide a year. That's as much as 500,000 cars. So why are gas stoves so popular if they have all these drawbacks? Well, some people swear by them. They say that they're the best way to cook food. I mean, there's a whole saying about that, right? It says, cooking with gas.
Cooking with gas.
Cooking with gas.
We all cook better when we're cooking with gas.
Gas is so hot it's not on when it's off. It's the only way to cook. That's what I was taught.
Anyway, there's a lot of us who normally use electronic stovetops, and we think of these, but they're not the only option that's out there. There are also flat top options, and we also have these now as well.
Induction stoves use electromagnets that heat pots and pans directly, rather than transferring heat through the stovetop.
Experts say induction stoves don't emit pollutants or greenhouse gases, and some chefs actually swear by them.
I've been cooking on induction now for about 15 years, and I haven't looked back since.
Okay, let's get back, though, to this ban and why everyone's so worked up about it. We know that the U.S. President, Joe Biden, isn't banning gas stoves, but is anybody else? And the answer is actually yes. In 2019, Berkeley banned natural gas in homes. And just in December, New York City banned fuel burning systems in new construction and major renovations, including cooking appliances, although it did make an exemption for commercial kitchens. Now, this map, the blue marks the states where some municipalities have adopted gas bans or are thinking about it. But the red shows states where they've actually passed legislation to prevent cities from banning natural gas. And the natural gas hasn't escaped the conversation in Canada either. Vancouver plans to phase out most natural gas in the city by 2050, and in Quebec, they've banned oil heating in new construction. But these bans certainly haven't gotten the same kind of reaction as they've gotten in the States.
This is another example of government overreach from the Biden administration, and another example of them using their agencies like this Consumer Product Protection Commission, just like they use the EPA and the SEC and the CDC.
What Congressman Ronnie Jackson says there kind of shows us what this really is all about. He listed a number of agencies in charge of things, everything from the environment to finance to public health. And all of these are targets of Republicans at some point or another over the past couple years.
Madam, by imposing this de facto ban, is this just another example of the EPA overreach?
Biden's SEC has clearly overstepped its bounds.
Today, the CDC has willingly allowed itself to be politicized, to behave as an arm of the DNC.
So that brings us right back to where we started, the polarization of everyday life between Democrats and Republicans. The gas stoves are just the latest fodder in this growing culture war. Think about the 2007 Energy Act in the US that forced people to swap out their incandescent light bulbs for LEDs. One Republican strategist put it this way. He said, when it comes to party rhetoric and household items, it's not like any particular issue is earth-shattering or earth-shaking in itself, because it doesn't need to be. It's all about convincing Americans that the government is interfering with their everyday lives. That's the play. And that messaging creates relatable issues for voters to think about. So with this latest turn on the culture war, as with every other one that's come before, it's really all about the power of communication and what hits closest to home.